Everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast series, Leaders in Supply Chain. Today we have with us Tim Drury, who's the Chief Supply Chain Officer of Americana Foods. Tim joined Americana Foods in 2021. Prior to that, Tim had spent 28 plus years with Unilever. During his long journey there, he spent time managing their supply chains across Europe, Asia, and Africa. In his last role there, he had the leadership responsibility for more than 30,000 employees across Middle East and Africa. Tim is an endurance sports champion, having successfully completed the Ironman triathlon and has also swum across the English Channel. Tim is passionate about coaching, and aside from coaching his team at work, he also coaches the Dubai-based swimmers. I'm looking forward to this conversation with Tim. Hi, Tim. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Yeah, hi Jay. Yeah, all good, thank you.
Okay. Tim, we met a while back in December, and it's been great our engagement with you. So I'm curious, to understand your story. Why supply chain and what brought you to the role that you are doing right now?
Yeah, crikey. Take you all the way back 59 years ago, born in the UK, down very close to London, but my parents are Liverpool, Manchester based. So about the age of 10, we moved up just south of Liverpool. So that's, I think, where sort of, my family is, and that's, I guess, where, can I feel most attuned to with regard to the UK. But I left home at just turned 18, so I was doing a sandwich course. So you do a year in engineering beforehand. So I went to a company called TI Tube Investments. They made anything to do with steel tubing, bikes, car exhausts, you name it. And I arrived not really knowing much about engineering, to be honest, or supply chain back in the day. No Google, just books. The reason I think I've drifted into that really was I had a couple of mates whom we just enjoyed metalwork at school, GCSE level. And from that, I did maths and physics and thought, okay, let's try engineering. So there's no real scientific basis, really. I just, kind of, to some extent, went with the flow and wanted to try something real before I did the university bit. So that's why I spent a year working for Tube Investments. And that really was quite a game changer all the way through sort of coming out of university. I'd got a lot of practical experience. So coming into interviews was much better off than somebody that's just done the straight degree course, because you've got experiences to talk through. And I'd encourage anybody that is, at the school, university level to get as much practical experience as possible. As we talk, I'll talk through my kids and their experience of trying to get a job and, kind of the graduate merry-go-round that is now. But back in the day, it wasn't quite as competitive. So anyway, I did my year in industry, learned a lot about myself, obviously, because I'm living away from home, quite young. Went down to Southampton for mechanical engineering. Really, really enjoyed that. So moved from a 3-year course to a 4-year course. And that brought in some supply chain elements to the engineering side. And then when I was looking for a job coming out the other end, I could have gone down 2 routes, one of which was very techie engineering, PhD, researchy type role, or more down the FMCG, general supply chain leadership type roles. And I didn't really appreciate that sort of junction in my career to the extent that it was, but just was interviewed by a guy who I just found fascinating at Unilever. He was a 63-year-old engineer, extremely funny, very irreverent, and he just seemed like a really cool guy to go and work for. He'd worked all over the world in engineering, and he was running a department that was around improving engineering in Unilever, manufacturing excellence, before it was called manufacturing excellence. So I can remember the first week I was given a book by Shigeo Shingu, which was Single Minute Exchange of Die. So this is, as I say, pre-internet, pre-everything, and you learn from a textbook. And this was a Japanese guy that had done a lot of work on improving changeovers dramatically in the car industry through just working out internal, external tasks, and then the internal task looking for, kind of quick release mechanisms and this sort of thing. So the reason I joined Unilever was John, and it was yeah, 5 brilliant years, to be honest, my first 5 years. So it was working in the UK, Europe, America, Africa, on continuous improvement and a lot of different factories. So you've got a very broad base of what is good, what is average, and what is, kind of not very good at all. And you can learn from it all. So as a start to my career, it was fantastic. So I stayed with Unilever for like 24, 25 years in total. Very lucky with the guys I worked for. Lots of different experiences. Ended up coming into Dubai and spending the last considerable amount of time, probably about 20 years in Dubai. But so I finished in the UK in research, moved to Italy and did project engineering. Now, this was a time when Unilever was consolidating factories. So it's quite an exciting time to take a multi-category factory and turn it into a specialized shampoo factory and toothpaste factory, especially at a time when I didn't speak Italian. So to this day, I've no idea why they selected me for the job. So I hadn't worked in a personal care factory, couldn't speak Italian, and hadn't, I'd got a lot of broad experience, but no detailed engineering experience at the time. So that was a learning curve for me and for the guys that worked for me, because obviously I pitched up saying, hello, boss, you, me, hi, am in Italian. The hard work of my 2 weeks of intensive Italian training, I don't think I was a particularly good student. But because I was working in a factory with 400 people who didn't speak English, you learn Italian really, really quickly. So I could do stainless steel storage tank before I could order a loaf of bread, which is quite a bizarre vocabulary-based olfactory. Did that for a bit, then ran the production for a while in Italy. Meanwhile, I got married. We just had James, who's our first child, and various family reasons, we were looking for a move. So we moved to Holland, and it was back into research, but very, very different. It was global innovation, which was so different. So you can imagine you're a production manager. What are you doing this week? Same as pretty much you did last week. How can you kind of squeeze out a little bit more efficiency? How can you make it more safe, quality? But generally quite repetitive, the same sort of thing. It's fairly obvious what you've got to do. So here's a blank sheet of paper. Beverages, tea bags is a highly competitive area. We need innovations. Off you go.
Okay, was that the time that you came up with the tea bag? Because I know Unilever was known for how it innovated on the tea bag.
Yeah. So it was a time when the pyramid bag in the UK was produced. So that was a partnership between a Unilever and a company called Moland's, who were at the time a cigarette producer of machines. And they were looking to diversify, and Unilever was looking for, kind of alternative, innovative machine supplier to work with. And the team at Trafford Park, led by a guy called Dave Manson back in the day, together with the research team of Moland's, came up with this, quite wacky, innovative machine. But that took a number of years to develop. So I'm going from, what are we doing today, and what we did yesterday is irrelevant because we've got to produce the shift, to something that's going to take sort of 3 or 4 years to come to fruition. So at the time, Unilever was competing, obviously, with the other big players around Tetley, etc. And we were looking at their patents and what they are up to. And squeezable tea bags may be the next best thing. So there I am with bits of paper and string coming up with potential tea bags. Came up with a design. We got a patent for that between Unilever and a company at this time called EMA, who are a big machine supplier based in Italy. And then we worked with the Italian family to produce a machine for squeezable tea bags. We, kind of launched it in Italy, but it didn't turn out to be quite the consumer innovation that we thought. Meanwhile, typical with innovations, the pyramid bag processes work quite nicely. So from the UK, that was then in Europe. So as an innovative journey, that, kind of you get some pluses and minuses, and obviously, hopefully the pluses stick, and, till today, the PG Tips innovation is around in the UK. So did that, and then a job came up in Dubai. Now, I hadn't worked in tea bags, knew nothing about Dubai, hadn't worked in a tea bag factory, knew about tea bag technology at this point. And it was to build a factory. Now, the guy who was running that region, a guy called Dave Hughes, I'd worked with before, and he said, would I be interested? Came over, had a look, and thought, wow, this is really cool. So got to build my own factory. So going back through that diverse manufacturing excellence 5 years of seeing all sorts of different places. I spent 4 months in Nigeria as a trainee. Now,
what was that? What year was that?
This is 88. Again, pre-internet, pre-mobile phone. So so if something's not working and the guys don't know how to fix it, you're basically on a fax machine.
Yeah.
Maybe the odd phone call, but phone calls were expensive, especially from Nigeria. So what that teaches you is, what do you know and what you don't know. And there's an awful lot of basic stuff you don't know. So you may be able to get the theoretical design of a pump, but can you actually fix one? And I kind of quickly realized I couldn't. And so it's that basic stuff that John was saying, you need to spend 3 months in somewhere like Nigeria because you'll get to understand what you know and what you don't know. He really was a sort of great person to work through at that stage of my career. So taking all of that it was really nice to then have your own factory to try and put all of that into, all the things that work well, all the things that don't work well, and try and get it into a factory. So I built a factory together with obviously the team, and then we ran that for 3 years. And typical of Unilever at the kind of my boss at the time, who was the chairman of the region, said, would I be interested in sales? Because he thought it would be good for my personal development, whether I stayed in sales or switched to supply chain. Okay, know nothing about sales. Okay, let's give that a go. And I can remember my first interactions with my new sales team, and they were talking about this channel, that channel. I'm thinking a channel is something you swim across, or kind of it's a steel section. And they were obviously sales channels are modern trade, home trade, etc., etc. So that was quite a groovy experience. I spent 6 months really working on the people and the organization, because I couldn't really add a lot of technical value. And over the time, you then, you work hard at understanding sales management, sales leadership, and what you need to do in terms of, maximizing distribution or promotion effectiveness, or, kind of all these different areas. And then, for about 2.5 years, what do I do? Stay in business, or do I move back into supply chain? A nice supply chain job came up. If we were going to stay in sales, that had to move country. Jane and the boys, at this stage, we now got 3 kids, meant that really Dubai was our focus, and I'll sort of continue on that. And so yes, we decided to stay in Dubai, and I took a North Africa, Middle East operational role, which is the first time I'm leading remote teams. So that is, again, quite a challenge. How do you get leadership, direction, KPI, measurement, visibility with a team that is a 9-hour flight away in Morocco, for instance? I'm working in English, they're mainly working in Arabic. So that was quite a learning curve for me. Obviously, the whole world's gone around remote working now through this sort of medium. Here we are on Zoom. One of the big things coming out of COVID is remote working is a lot easier. You go back mid-90s, I suppose, more of a challenge technically. So trying to work across quite a diverse big regions. That was, for me, quite a steep learning curve, but got some good coaching from, kind of my boss, who at the time was running Asia, Africa, and, was a good role model, a guy called Colin Nelson, who I learned huge amounts from. And then another role came up, which was more category focused. So that's an operational role. So that is running the factories, running the logistics, distribution, etc. Unilever, like quite a few FMCGs, split into category supply chain and operational supply chain. So the category supply chain job was looking 5-10 years in advance. What's the technology you need? Working with the global category teams on, what are the consumer habits? How much shampoo, for instance, or tea is going to be drunk or consumed in China? Where are the population base? What's the age profile? Hence, what are the consumer habits leading to differential product requirements? And as a result of that, where do you need your factories? What technology do you need? Working with the big global suppliers then to say, right, this is the sorts of equipment we'll need in X, Y, Z years. So that, again, totally different, very, very interesting. Did that for a number of years, and then moved back to an operational role, just a bigger area, Africa, Middle East, on the operations side. All based in Dubai. all with a family that's happily settled in Dubai. Boys are very comfortable. Jane, my wife, was now running 2 internet businesses. So we're quite stable and settled. And Unilever, to be fair to Unilever, were really patient with me staying in Dubai. But we kind of got to the point where for me to develop my career, I needed to move kind of elsewhere. So I've done a lot of developing country work, as you can imagine, from Dubai, looking after Africa, etc. Not so much developed world, and that really would, in order for me to grow and develop, needed. At the same time, Jane's businesses are doing well, but the boys were 14, 16, 18, 19, and they needed somebody at home to help them through kind of into the sort of the employment world. So I made the decision to step out and be a stay-at-home dad, looking up, coaching, guiding them, taking a bit of breather from kind of supply chain in the professional world. So yeah, I spent a number of years looking after the boys and watching them grow up, which was fantastic.
You've been an amazing role model, I think, and I will touch upon this whole aspect of D&I then and what leaders need to do. But when you transition from Unilever to, which was a very institutionalized multinational, and Unilever is really known for its processes, and you then transition to, say, a regional player, which is very dominant, very focused in this particular region. How was that transition? What are some of the changes? What are some of the similarities, and how are you navigating that change?
So Americana is a big regional food manufacturer, diverse categories, geographic footprint of the Middle East and beyond. I think some of the similarities would be around people. People are people. People are the same in all locations. You need to concentrate on the talent you've got, develop the talent you've got, which is around training, coaching, developing, selection, organization. So, Unilever, yes, is, Unilever, P&G, Procter, kind of wherever you go, they'd be possibly slightly more mature in their organization. So if I look at something like procurement, Unilever a number of years ago changed from a sort of regional organization of procurement where you end up with, fractioned people buying packaging. So you might have 10 people responsible for packaging, and then they've got teams of people competing with the same suppliers and not having a very strong knowledge base. I think it was Mark Engel that led the Unilever drive for global procurement. So it's market facing. So you organize by material type, raw material, food ingredients, etc. Coming into Americana, that's a process we're doing right now. So we have a CPO for procurement, and we're going through that stage now. So there's a huge number of similarities, to be honest. The products and the operations, whether it be attention on safety, attention on quality, planning, S&OP, logistics, they're all the same. You have to have a safe operation, food safe, people safe. You have to have a drive on quality all the time. Some of the differences, my role is completely different. So my role now is Chief Supply Chain Officer. So I'm, back in the day in Unilever, it would have been Pierre Luigi's role. And he is a role model for me. A lot of days I'm thinking, okay, what would Pierre Luigi be doing? Because there's a huge amount of responsibility on what's in your head. What direction are you taking Americana's in? Very much focused on my boss, Amar Fagal, and his needs and the business needs. So obviously I'm following that direction. But how you do that, what technologies do you adopt? Where do you put your resources? In a Unilever model, or a bigger company, you're working for somebody, and to your point, you have a process. That's not necessarily the case. So for me personally, the role is very different. And I think one of the biggest differences, again, in a bigger global company, you'd have excellence teams, whether it be on the technology side, you'd have Professor Soap, he's made soap for 30 years. Or on the process side, you've got a global head of S&OP that said, this is the way we're going to do S&OP, global safety structure, etc. And I think the key is to be just very open and very much a learning organization and a learning individual. So, working with your suppliers on technical innovations, whether it be machine suppliers, material suppliers, huge opportunities for innovation places, huge opportunities for savings in cost, efficiencies, etc., by working better with both sorts of suppliers, and just been interested in what's going on around you in terms of competition.
Yeah.
So I think you have to work harder at understanding what's going on around you, and I'll come back to a few examples later on, I think. But that's, for me, is really key in this role, is making sure both myself and everybody external.
Interesting. So, I can clearly see that you're talking that in Unilever, where there are a lot of processes, there are COEs, there are resources to draw upon. Here, the responsibility is all on yourself to create those and where to find those resources. I think, and that is a big thing for an organization. So, when you are in this growth, but there is also the fact that companies like Americana are also driving a lot of growth, driving a lot of changing habits. They are driving how people are consuming food, closer to the markets that is more relevant. What are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities that you are seeing, with Americana Foods for this particular region?
Gosh, I think on the opportunities side, as always, innovation. Fundamentally understanding consumers and customers. The habits of people's food consumption is changing faster now than probably ever has. You'd think, food is food, but it isn't. The way people are consuming, how they're ordering, e-commerce, Google Maps, kind of is blown away, kind of the way people consume food. The way people order food from, kind of, I look at my own habits, how many times do I go to a supermarket now? Maybe once a week rather than 2 or 3 times a week. The rest of the time it's on, you're topping up online. So in that space, understanding consumer, understanding customer, both are massively us to then innovate in us either a service offering or and that can be product or pack. And again, for us, it comes back to being very open with our suppliers. Inputs for that innovation delivery, listening to your customers, listening to your consumers. For me, that's working with my category team, working with my geography leaders in terms of what is happening in the various jobs working in. Then seeing what do we need to do in terms of then our service offering with our logistics, whether it's ourselves or with a third party. Back through the factory, then machine suppliers. What are the innovations that we can bring the machines and the technology that we're using? And then into material supply and what can they offer us, whether it be innovative, sustainable, better quality, longer shelf life, you name it. The market itself is growing. We're fortunate within the region to have a relatively growing region, a region that is relatively young in terms of demographics. And so if you look at the age profile here, it's quite skewed compared to somewhere like Europe or Japan. They'd be maybe the extremes. And for us, obviously, that is quite a big opportunity. We need to understand that. Within the supply chain, then, opportunities are massive. Technology is changing so fast. Whether that be, kind of just look at something like systems, AI-driven systems, machine learning-driven systems, ERP systems, the speed with which you can get information from your ERP system through into a simple Power BI dashboard. We've got some great guys working here now, taking the data out of our ERP system, and just with just more modern, better ways of extracting that data, manipulating it, you get so much better information, so much faster. Whether it be on inventory control, traceability information, getting it faster. Where was it? Who supplied you? Where is it now? And where's it gone? That can be obtained so much quicker. Other opportunities for us, it would be around organisation. As I said, we're doing the whole procurement reorganisation. And then people development, huge opportunities in terms of people development. We'll come on to that maybe a bit later, but things like adopting APIC, CPIM, CSCP certification, through sort of supervisory level soft skill training, use of products such as the Alcott Supply Chain Academy or Udemy, that there's a lot of them around now that got platforms where you can, do remote training of people together with then organized implementation of that training. So you give somebody like a 3-week course on, I don't know, white belt Six Sigma, and then say, okay, right, now let's go into the workplace and run a 6-week implementation of what you've learned together with the presentation afterwards. Be sort of typical area that we're looking to develop our guys on. Inflation devaluation within our region would be fairly significant.
And how are you coping with that? Because Egypt is doing some phenomenal inflationary numbers, and obviously it has an impact on the top line and the bottom line.
So it's just remaining very operational with the geography team, with the sales team.
Okay.
Making sure between the sales team, the category brand team, our understanding of, again, huge change in consumer habits. What can we afford? What's the pack size? What's the channel they're shopping in? And then a huge amount on, okay, let's have a look at our packs again. What was potentially of value to the consumer, maybe they're now saying, well, no, that's not of value to me anymore. So design to value then becomes super, super, super important. Working with suppliers on alternate substitution, maybe what was, big scale imported supply was the cheapest option. Maybe that isn't now because of the devaluation. You've then got a local supply then comes in. Then obviously then isn't the same standard, and you need to, kind of do a supplier evaluation, etc., to make sure everything's the same. Other challenges, equipment lead times would be relatively big. Spares availability occasionally is still drift out from obviously the COVID issues. Material availability is beginning to be less of an issue. More material cost, and again back to sort of global inflation, the effect of kind of energy prices in Europe. Okay, European costs are then up. Okay, where do you then source from? Is it the exact same equivalent, or is it slightly different? You need to adapt your process or pack accordingly. So just huge amount of work on the detail.
Constant agility. And so, you spoke a little bit about building people capability, especially at the front line with, the solutions, whether it's Udemy or the Alcott Supply Chain Academy. What is the leadership mindset? Because I know that, when you come into an organization, and this is also in a journey towards, maybe digitization, maybe adopting some of the newer technologies. Is there anything specific that you had to do with your leadership team, with the people that, you closely work with? What is their capability, their leadership? What is the kind of mindset change that, you had to experience or influence in this organization?
Yeah, I think there's a number of layers to that, Jaya. If I take my leadership team, it's a little bit about, again, you then got to go to sort of individuals. So if I look across them as a team, it would be, again, making sure that they're open to an understanding of all the technical changes that are relevant to them. Now, that would be, potentially product related. So, making sure that we're going to something like the Frankfurt Mesa Fair that's coming up now, the massive packaging fair. Making sure we're saying, okay, where can you get cost-effective pick and place units from? You can get very expensive ones, but kind of they're in our region they don't work. So where can you get those? Kind of same with things like case packing, end of line, cartoners, you name it. What is the latest technology? What can you get that saves you packaging material? All of that, but we've got a team going out to Frankfurt to have a look at. So that's super important. I think on the soft skills side, a lot of it is around coaching and culture generation. So it's working as a supply chain leadership team and our own soft skills and our own ability to work with one another, be open with one another, look at problems, challenges as opportunities, embrace the change that we need to take place, and then try and get that culture going down through the organization. Trying to get a from manufacturing excellence, continuous improvement embedded everywhere, so that you are constantly saying, how can we improve, rather than saying, how great are we? Because otherwise somebody's going to come along and be better.
Yeah.
I always use the coaching analogy of, if Roger Federer is ranked number 2, is he sat with his feet up saying, look at me, I'm number 2 in the world? Or is he on the tennis court till 10 o'clock at night, or in the gym sorting out his nutrition, working with a coach on his mind and everything else to get back to being number 1? And the obvious answer is he's trying to get back to being number 1, because you can always improve and you always have to improve. That really is what I'm trying and working with my team on getting through our supply chain team. And through that, you will then get, if you are open, you will see new technology coming down the track that you have to develop and adapt for yourself.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is definitely a lot of external orientation, curiosity. That is something that you're championing in the team. And, I especially want to touch upon coaching, because I know that, that is something that you're very passionate about. It's almost the style of leadership that I have at least heard you, sort of embody. What have been some of your role models in your career who have had, maybe one or two that have had some kind of an impact on you? And then what are the coaching mechanisms that you are taking in the organization to kind of institutionalize that coaching mechanism and the coaching culture in the organization? Can you touch upon a couple of these?
Yeah, I think in terms of role models, I go all the way back to the guy that recruited me into Unilever, John. He was just funny. So huge empathy with people, and always trying to be creative and involving with his team. And again, at 63, he was curious still, trying to think of, and adopt new maintenance practices. Then within Unilever, Pierre Luigi, he brought massive change to the global Unilever supply chain. Very focused on what he wanted to do, very clear as the direction he wanted Unilever to go in. And I think Unilever needed that at the time. So I learned a lot from watching him. We were in Africa, and I was running Africa at the time, responsible for plantations. And Unilever's got about 6 at the time, in just outside Nairobi. We had 60 square kilometers of plantations. But you're responsible for everything: roads, schools, people that live there, everything. And I'd been looking after it probably for about a year and working in beverages for quite a time. And I thought I knew a reasonable amount about the industry. But Pierre Luigi came in, and it was quite obvious with the questions he was asking, which were at a global level, that we hadn't got the answers to how much tea is going to be planted in 10, 15 years' time, and where is it? What varieties do you need? The level of detail that he wanted and needed to make the decisions that he felt we wanted to make strategically, we hadn't got the answers to. So that was a real learning I've tried to bring into the job that I'm doing now. And back to my comment earlier, what would Pierre Luigi be thinking of doing? And I use that. I have him down as a great change agent. Paul Polman would be another one of the Unilever chairman who I had the pleasure of meeting and working for. Again, the clarity that he had in terms of his communication across such a big company was, for me, second to none. Then as a business leader, somebody like Jan Zijderveld, who ran North Africa, Middle East, had huge marketing and sales insights, out of sales back into supply chain. So he was quite an informative guy to work for. But then there's so many people that have worked for me that have, unbeknownst to them, coached me. So there's a guy called Marco Battacca, who was a trainee for me in Italy, and now is UK based, and he's a CEO in the UK. And I just remember watching the enthusiasm that Marco brought to his job, and thought, I need to have some of that. I benchmark myself against, somebody's working for me, and I'm nowhere near as good. So all through my working life, I've, had coaches all around me. Today, I'm learning a lot from the people who work for me. who work, in different functions here, and I think, wow, they are so good at that, and you just try and adopt what, some of what they're good at. But even outside work, I have a swimming coach. I can't improve my swimming without having a technical coach. In terms of formal approach, etc., I had a lot of formal coaching training with Unilever.
Okay.
So, looking at it in terms of, smart objectives, etc. For me, it's about focusing on the player 100%. And that's it. And if you do that, you're going to get it right. It's not about you at all. It's about looking at that individual or that team and how can they be better. And doing absolutely everything you can to do that. If that's, having a hard conversation about them, looking in the mirror and evaluating where they are and what they're up to, or, trying to open their eyes to new alternatives. Focusing on the player or focusing on the team is super important.
Yeah, interesting. So, one thing that, that I've also spent a little bit of time in Unilever, and one thing Unilever somehow managed to do was institutionalize coaching as a way of managerial effectiveness, managerial competence. Yeah, they did that at different levels, skills of time, and therefore people, when they have left that organization, have carried a little bit of that culture. Have you implemented or seen the impact of, or any such institutionalized formats that you have then adopted, or you have found your own formula for Americana Foods? Can you share some examples if you've institutionalized, and then what is the impact that you are seeing, if you have seen any of those initiatives?
Yeah, so Americana has its own sort of assessment process, KPI-driven assessment process. And backing that up, I would always have a discussion around the individual. Where are they going career-wise? What do they need? What do they feel? Their development opportunities. I will then obviously chip in with my own observations. And that really then starts what is effectively a coaching conversation. So Americana has sort of performance KPIs for kind of mid-year, end of year, kind of technical appraisal, etc. Then in and around that, we'll have for me with my team, a more of a coaching discussion, which is a little bit career-based. Where are they? What development needs do they feel they require, whether that be technical or soft skills in terms of leadership. I will then chip in with my observations. At this point, I'm very much an observer, a mirror to their performance, etc. And I encourage my guys to do the same with their team. So it's part KPI driven, part individual coaching with regard to what do they need, either career wise or soft skill development. In addition, Americana's got, kind of leadership attributes, which I would get the guys to look at themselves first of all. There is a scoring system, which we use to some extent, but the way I like to try and coach this is as follows, because it kind of, for me, opens up people's scope. So if you take something like score yourself 1 to 5, maybe a 3, maybe a 4, and they'll give whatever personal reasons for that. So let's say, okay, right, in all your life, who has been that creative person? Who blows you away? Is it Elon Musk? Is it Steve Jobs? Is it Picasso? Right, okay, that person. So we then visualize that on the board. Why? Write some stuff down. Okay, how do you compare with that guy? Oh, well, yeah, I need to do this, that, and the other in order to be there. Being light goes on. So that gives you that gap from where you are, and it gives you the ability to sort of criticize yourself. So let's take me and my ability to communicate across a large group of people against Paul Polman. Exactly, not very good. So okay, so why is Paul Polman so good? Because he's so clear. Has the ability to take, a 55 billion company all working all over the world and bring it down to 2 or 3 fundamental KPIs expressed on a couple of sentences you can put on the back of a t-shirt. such that everybody gets it. So everybody is moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that I've kind of found quite useful to say, okay, back to role modeling. Who are against those leadership attributes? Creativity, innovation, decisiveness, leadership, empathy. Who is the person for you that is either influenced you the most, or you hold up there as a pedestal, and then why, and then how you're gonna move towards them.
So clear visual metrics, and then how you take a person to that, and that's a fabulous way to coach. I also wanted, to talk about, you touched upon that a little bit in terms of the changing consumer habits and how you're looking at some of your stuff in the packaging. For all food industries, large food players, two things are becoming increasingly important. One is sustainability, and the other one is making their food more environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, the things that Americana is doing in these two directions? How is it? Because it has such a huge consumer base, it has such a huge influence, and like you said, one of the biggest and the fastest growing region with a relatively younger population. What are some of the path breaking sort of, whether it's a marketing campaign, whether it's a consumer education campaign, or what is it that Americana is doing in terms of driving some of these two things around sustainability and environmentally friendly food?
Number one is, again, going back to understanding consumer and customer. What is relevant for both? Because without that, we're kind of lost. And then it's saying, right, for either group, that's a value, because that gives you your opportunities to maybe reduce on packaging, change the product recipe, etc. What can you do in terms of pack size, for instance, to kind of change the volume, but still maybe have the same impact on shape by just changing the dimensions around? That gives us savings in packaging, savings in logistics. The logistics savings for us are very significant because a lot of our products are frozen, and frozen cold chain is expensive for both in terms of cost and environment. Next one down would be material selection. Working with suppliers on more sustainable materials and packaging technology that reduces the required packaging. Supply choice is another big one. Again, having a procurement organization that is now market facing. So you've got specialists in raw material buying, packaging buying, backed up by packaging technologists or product development guys. You can then look around, and again, it's about being open and seeing the technology and what can you do to have more sustainable materials, less materials, more effective materials, whatever it may be. Is it, changing the gas permeability to improve shelf life on a product, make it more, potentially ambient stable so it doesn't have to be chilled, for instance. Coming then into the manufacturing space, it would be technical investments.
Okay.
So looking at the processing side of things, we've got some quite interesting processing innovations coming now, cooking under pressure, etc., to reduce cooking times, reducing then electrical load, water load, etc. So that's quite an interesting area. And then the implementation of Factory 4.0 and controls. It's control, on an ammonia plant, on a heating plant, ammonia for chilling, heating plants, etc. Control of and understanding where your water is, where your water waste is, the amount of cleaning that you do. Which brings us on to companies such as Diversey, and working with a company like Diversey on what cleaning is appropriate for what machine. So you've got two machines. One's, high heat, high fat, so you've got a load of fat stuck all over it, and another one that's relatively dry. You don't want the same cleaning materials on those. The relationship between the volume of water and the pressure of water, how much do you need there? Making sure your water streams are cleared off so that you've got kind of very dirty water, kind of easier water to clean, etc. Which ones goes where, making sure that you've got an ETP plant that's as efficient as possible. Looking at through the entire process to look for waste reduction, and that can be in all sorts of work streams, whether that be working with your suppliers, working on the shop floor as to what we can do to reduce, or working with our machine suppliers, which comes back all the way to, my first year in Unilever, which was all around manufacturing excellence and continuous improvements. It's against the same thing. It's the same tools, same techniques that you would approach something like sustainability, because part of it is around, moving forward and forward and forward at reducing your impact through just being more efficient. And part is working then with innovative solutions, with whether that be suppliers or within your own team.
Interesting. So, you're in a space where at least one of the things which I have learned during my time in Nestle is that people's food habits take a generation to change. You really like the food that you grow with, but at the same time, the process of producing and the process of putting it on the table is changing extremely fast. And that puts a different challenge in terms of the kind of skills and competencies and capabilities that you bring into the organization.
Yeah.
As a leader, as a leader in supply chain, what are the key? Can you share with us some top 5 skills or competencies that you would look for when you hire in your team? Keeping in mind this constant sort of dichotomy for your organization or a supply chain organization.
Gosh, empathy would be one, because that gives you so many insights.
Okay.
So, how can
Interesting choice. You're saying empathy for a very supply chain operational technical field.
But think it through. Empathy means your ability to understand other people fundamentally, and then work with those. And you can't understand consumer insights without understanding your consumers. Hence, you have to have empathy for your consumers, empathy for your customers. So if you're moving the supply chain in a direction, it has to be in the direction that the business needs you to go. So you've got to have empathy with your business leaders to understand what they want. So, I'm my boss, or Fernando, the head of protein, I have to listen to them and fundamentally understand what we need. Are we, how big are the opportunity of plant-based? And I need to be open to that, because it's a massive opportunity for Americana, huge opportunity for innovation, etc. So that would be one area that maybe wouldn't typically you'd think of you need empathy for. But then when you come into the supply chain, just being, for the factory floor, for the operators, technicians, supervisors, section heads, managers, being in touch with those people, you need empathy for that, to understand what do they need, whether that, kind of, where are they living, kind of, what skills do they need, what's their job like, etc. All the way through, what training and development do they need, what's important to them. Completely different facet would be something like decisiveness. As they coming then to the leadership role, then it's very much about saying, right, what direction are we going in? How do make a decision? Because not making a decision is very easy, but it is a passive way of making a decision, because you've made a decision not to do anything. And a lot of people miss that. And that's super important. Enthusiasm for the job. You're there a long time, and without seeing in some, say, if you're doing an interview or you're observing a team and looking for, kind of people that you're going to grow, are they enthusiastic for what they're doing? I love what I do. I really do. I find it, kind of, it's just fascinating. I'm learning every day, all the time, as I said, from everybody around me. So I look for that in other people. Creativity, and it can come in 1,001 different ways. Maybe on an innovation, maybe on a cost saving, but if I go back to the innovative job I had, which was blank sheet of paper, 5 years, you could say that role needs creativity, it needs innovation. But at the same time, a production manager needs creativity and innovation, because otherwise he's going to be bored or she's going to be bored, and the team that's working for them is going to be bored. And then they're going to make mistakes. They're not going to develop. So how do you get creativity and innovation in a production environment? Through continuous improvement. You're looking at every aspect: safety, food safety, people safety, quality, you name it. What else? Drive. Again, it comes back to a certain extent, are you enthusiastic? But are you also driven for the job that you're doing? Both. And you look for drive in all of these aspects, in and out of work. And as much in out of work as in work, you know, look for examples to say, yes, okay, that person, yeah, can handle this, that, and the other. Right, okay, let's give him or her this opportunity.
Interesting. Thank you. And I think that summarizes it well in terms of, the competencies that you're talking about. I now want to come to a part of you which is, which has really fascinated me, which is your passion for endurance sports. And I know that you've successfully swum across the English Channel, and you've also, I think, done a triathlon, and you successfully completed the Ironman. How do you keep that going? I mean, you have a fairly hectic full-time, job, and aside from that, the time and the energy that it takes. How do you balance? That is my first question. And then what are some of the aspects about you that you learn there, which you then apply, to your work life as well?
Balanced badly, I would say. So I'll take you all as an intro, but I'll take you all the way back. I was 24 in Nigeria when I had my first back problem. So I twisted around in a car park and thought, wow, I cannot move. And I spent the next, whatever it was, 6 weeks lying down in Nigeria. It was probably the worst thing I could have done for a back strain. But anyway, there we are. And from there to 30, about once a year, my back would go in inverted commas and I got to be stuck. And through that period, I was playing usual things: football badly, tennis badly, etc., but enthusiastically. But each time, as each year went on, I felt older and older and stiffer, and I was still like, this is now late 20s. So I arrived in Holland, and I was complaining to a Dutchman about life. And being very Dutch and direct, he said, well, stop complaining and do something about it. There's a swimming pool around the corner, go swimming. And I can remember being very depressed because it was lunchtime in Holland, which is, I think, when old age pensioners can swim for free, because the kids and the schools are not in the pool. So I went down as a late 20s, early 30s, and I was being lapped by people my age now in their 60s and 70s. And I thought, wow, I really do need to sort myself out. So I was swimming regularly, and the same Dutch guy said, well, why don't we cycle to work? Because we're in Holland, and he cycled everywhere. And I can remember I had to drive to his house, which was in Delft, and we were only going to cycle 15 kilometers, which is a ridiculously short journey now, thinking about it. But I bought a second-hand bike, and I got it out, and there was Robert, and he had these like conical, huge muscular legs from cycling and speed skating. And I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble here. And I followed him all the way to work. I got how am I going to sit down for the next 8 hours? And how am I going to get home? Because I was that unfit. So cut a long story short, ended up cycling all the way to and from work, which was then about 50k, about 3 or 4 times a week. So I got reasonably fit, and then Unilever organised a triathlon, baby sprint one. But I thought, okay, I'll do that, and immediately enthusiastic with running, and got shin splints and was injured, but managed to get through the triathlon. And what I found was, because that was in a straight line, I could actually do it without my back being too bad. So that was at least a sport I could then do something about. So then we moved to Dubai, and I was doing sprint distance triathlons rather uncompetitively, but really enjoying it. Nice weather, out and about. I thought, okay, right, I'll do a longer distance triathlon. I'll try and do the Ironman distance. And I can remember starting the training and thinking, oh, my back's not good at all here. I beginning not to feel my legs. And cut a long story short, within about 6 months, I couldn't walk. I was limping quite badly. So the 2 discs at the bottom of the back had collapsed, just one of those things. So I got in touch with a rower and a rugby player in the UK who had back surgery, because I thought, well, the clubs will have gone to a good back surgeon. And they're both fantastic. They wrote back to me really sympathetic and said, we'll use this guy for physio afterwards and stuff. So yeah, had back surgery, which was reasonably successful. Had another back surgery, and then within 6 weeks of the second one, I was playing tennis.
Oh, wow.
Really badly, but I was playing tennis. And that yeah, fantastic, game changer, life changer. So then I thought, fine, I've now been given effectively the gift of walking back. So I'm going to go and do, a long distance triathlon. So, which is 4K swim, 180K on a bike and a marathon. But yeah, just trained up for that and did that in Nice. I thought I was entering a flat triathlon along the coast, but in actual fact, it went up through the Alps. So I've never cycled through mountains before, because obviously Dubai is relatively flat.
Yeah.
And I got up the first mountain about very near the top, and I just got cramp in the front of my leg. So I thought, clipped out, and I got immediately cramp in the back and fell off the bike. And the whole thing was quite an adventure. And then I was way too fast through the bike and the swim and the bike, got on the run, and my stomach shut down completely. So I couldn't digest food and ended up in the medical tent on a drip. But I'd finished, which was really cool. So then I did a few more, but realized that the half distance was a lot easier for me to manage with work. So that's 2K swim, 90K on a bike, and a half marathon, all of which you can do with that block of about 2 or 3 hours of training. So the maximum you need to do is on a bike for about 2.5 hours to do 90K. So I could manage that a lot easier, rather than, I can remember on a Friday night, I'd drive out to where I was going to cycle, sleep till about 1 a.m, train from 1 till 7, and then be a dad down through the rest of the weekend. Kind of unsustainable, really. It was all about competition and racing, not about health at all. There's not a healthy, fit way to be at all. It was about competing in endurance events. At the same time as, got 3 youngish kids and a job to do. The job, you just find ways, to be honest. So one of the roles was the Asia Africa beverages role. So, I'd have to fly to West Africa, and they're 4 hours behind. But you can get up as a result, 7 o'clock in Dubai is 3 o'clock in Nigeria. So you're up at 3 o'clock in the gym, do 3 hours, and go to bed early. And then the other way around in Singapore, I'd say goodbye to everybody else and then go training from, say, 10 till 12:30, 1, and then, go to sleep. So again, you'd have reduced sleep as a result, potentially. So it's not a healthy, and not advocating this at all as a healthy way to live at all. Back to the balanced, unbalanced. But for me, it was just about, I loved the training. I just loved the event and competing.
Interesting. And
so, 2 events stick out, one of which was the Ironman World Championships, which I did in Florida. That was really cool. I realized how good people are there, because you're right at the back of the field. And people are so talented and so cool. And the other one was London to Paris. So that was with a team. So a mate organised the team, and somebody dropped down and said, did I want to do that? I thought that'd be so cool. So we started at Marble Arch. You run over, and then you swim the channel, and then you cycle to Paris. And this each bit you're doing an hour each. So you go and do an hour in the water, an hour out, hour in the water, an hour, etc. But nighttime swimming in the channel was fantastic for some of us. For some of us, it was super scary. For me, I'm reasonably comfortable in the water. So it's black. The water is black. It's obviously black sky, and you've got a boat next to you. You've got a glow stick on your arm and a whistle, and that's it. But it was a really cool experience. Now I've a long way from endurance. I don't do so much endurance sports now. Much more health focused, really. As you get older, you kind of realize, you need to look after yourself a bit more. So a lot of weights, a lot of power training. I still compete, but now in sprint swimming. Very different training, very different competition, but it's just interest. So something to do.
A lot of resilience, and I think you bring that resilience to the result focus and resilience to the supply chain world, I'm assuming, because when I hear you say that, and the challenge that you have on your physical body, and still you manage to complete it every time, right? So, and I think that is important. as a lesson for me in this entire story?
Yeah, because that works for me. For other people, it wouldn't work. But for me, if I watch myself, I'm so much more organized and focused if I'm competing for something. So it works for me. Other people, it wouldn't work. But I know looking at myself, that's what motivates me. And I get very then interested in the technology of improvement. So whether it be nutrition, sleep, training methods. So the training method for a 30-second sprint swim, which is what I'm competing in now, is totally different to a 11, 12-hour Ironman. Nutrition is different and everything else. So it's just interest. But same in the workplace. A lot of what I've kind of talked about is competing. You're competing against your competitors. So how can, it's a competitive environment. So how, everything is changing. And the world is changing so fast. So again, to your point, how do you be resilient? How do you be adaptive? And that is about having as best you can and understand it, a resilient supply chain, and whatever that means for Americana, we're trying to put in place, and an adaptive supply chain for Americana, and whatever that means to put in place, because you can't be resilient without being adaptive, because we don't know what's going to happen. The world is now so connected, so global. Somebody coughs somewhere, then it impacts Americana and our footprint. We're sourcing from all over the world, where our consumers are influenced by what goes on in the world. As you mentioned, the Egypt devaluation, or kind of what's happening in the GCC is influenced by the rest of the world. So as a result of that, and that's never going to change. It's only going to get more integrated. We're going to have to adapt faster. Just the impact of information technology in the time that I've been working is unbelievable, and the speed with which you can learn now and adapt and change has got to be so much faster, because if you don't, everybody else will.
Yeah. And you're kind of coming almost to the end of this conversation, and my last question is, when you look into the crystal ball, in this constant change and innovation, you spoke a little bit about this. What are the top 3 things that supply chains and people working in supply chains will need to keep in mind as they cope with so much change which is happening? You talked about how people are coming together, how what are going to be some of the, according to you, the top 3 within the supply chains, and for people working in supply chains, what to plan for in the next 10 years, and things that are going to be important?
A little depends on what stage career we're at. I think if you're coming into supply chain, it would be very much about trying to understand the whole quantum of it, and what opportunities are there, and what would interest you. So because you can either come into a job or come in as a trainee. If you're a trainee, then it's obviously you tend to get moved around in the bigger FMCG companies. But if you come in as a sort of direct entry, have a look at the total supply chain and make sure you've come into a bit that fits you. Get trained on the basics, APIC, CPIM, CSCP, and SIPs for procurement professionals. You can come into the supply chain from pretty much any degree. Doesn't say that you're, if you're going into accountancy, then you do the accountancy exam. So if you're coming into supply chain, why wouldn't you get professionally qualified, and so you know what you're talking about, so you could and know what other people are talking about, and if they're talking about whatever it may be in terms of a defined area of the supply chain, you understand the terminology and etc. So that for me, I think, would be useful. And the last one, again, and coming in and into supply chain, works all the way through, I think, is be open. Yeah. As you're moving up through stages of career, then I think a lot of it is around focusing on soft skills and leadership, which is role modeling, good role models, bad role models. You can learn from both.
Yeah.
You'll see people who, for you, are making mistakes. Okay, learn from that. Don't do that then. And obviously learn from the great people around, and that's we've talked about. Can be senior to you, can be junior to you. What else? Awareness of consumer and customer, always. It's a common theme I've talked about. What direction does the business need to go into? I listen to my boss and my category colleagues, geography colleagues. What do they need?
Yeah.
Market visits, going to the store, go and see what's going on. I was in Q8, and Sarah, my logistics manager, and Rami, they took me all the way through back store, etc. And we were looking at case configurations. We've got some of those we need to improve. Simple things like barcode legibility. When you see them in the store and you talk to the merchandisers or the shop helpers, you think, yeah, okay, we need to improve that. Lots of photos of what's going on. So yeah, be in touch with what's going on.
Thank you so much, Tim. This was a very engaging conversation, and we come towards the end of it. I'd really like to thank you for candidly sharing some of your insights with us. And I wish you all the best in your next sprint swimming dash, as well as, achieving your goals and targets in Americana. Thank you.
Jaya, thanks very much. Hopefully it's been useful. I've just sort of, just talked through, who I am and what I've been doing. So hopefully it's been useful to people. But thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to go to www.alcottglobal.com and click the podcast button for all the show notes of the interview. Also, subscribe to our mailing list to get our latest updates first. If you're listening to a streaming platform like iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher, we would appreciate the kind review. 5-star works best to keep us and the production team motivated and happy. And of course, share it with your friends. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so do feel free to follow me. And if you have any suggestions on what to do and who to invite next, don't hesitate to drop me a note. And if you're looking to hire top executives in supply chain or transform your business, of course, contact us as well to find out how we can help you. Thank you.